How are you doing today? Let's start out with a massive thank you to folks who commented and gave us corrections on our last reveal trailer breakdown video. Now it's time to see Battlefield 2042 in action, which means swinging with the grapple gun, airdropping tanks, getting sucked in tornadoes, specialist gadgets we haven't seen yet, and getting a feel for what 128 players is actually like on maps. Here are all the things that you might have missed in the gameplay trailer. Make sure to like the channel and subscribe so we can figure this all out together. Let's get to it. So the trailer starts with a rapid fire tease of what we're about to talk about in detail. Let's just skip over this and go to the good stuff. We can now see the Hourglass map in Doha, Qatar. It is actually a day map that gets dark as the sandstorm progresses. Players are coming from inside the sunken stadium objective, and there's actually so much in this shot. New sector objectives can be clearly seen, which are A1, A2, and A3. You need to take those objectives to hold a sector. One of the many changes to the new Conquest mode. This map has a lot of air assets and tanks on it. Some we can see here are a future version of the Osprey called the MV-38 Condor. It uses jet engines instead of rotors, and this is the first time we've seen one hovering. There's also this Russian Su-57 jet coming up fast from the enemy team, a futuristic Apache warchief, the Abrams M5A3, and that really fast tracked vehicle from the reveal. Maybe like a ripsaw? The perspective we're now in is the specialist Maria, who's the medic. She's riding in the back of a Nightbird chopper. You can tell by her blue gloves and stim pistol in the gadget slot, which we now know is the third slot in the inventory. Keep an eye on that as the trailer progresses. She's also rocking a dual sight here, which is kind of rad. As we get into air combat, the way the chopper's shifting back and forth seems like classic Battlefield controls, which will make experienced pilots happy. The great news is for new players, if you need to learn to fly, you can now go into full AI matches. Again, what really stands out here are just how many air assets are on this map. There's an Su-57, a Ka-52 Alligator, an F-35, the Apache Warchief, and a slow-flying Condor giving air-to-ground support. Here we have the assault specialist Webster McKay. Their names will also come up right here. And you know it's a specialist and not a username because the usernames on the left side are different. He's rocking a scout sniper rifle because guns aren't tied to operators anymore. Anybody can carry anything. Specialists do have one unique ability and one unique trait, but it is confirmed that they do generally fall under the old umbrella of classes. You can see the grapple gun ability here, third slot again. Webster fires his grappling gun, and it's surprising it actually has physics and momentum like the one from Titanfall. 2042 seems to be leaning heavily into fun over realism. This heavily armored chap here is probably the Delta specialist who shows up a bunch in this squad and whose gadget is probably the thing at the end of the trailer. As Webster lands, he goes into a slide. We see this a couple times in the trailer. There's definitely like a crouch slide, just in time to see an execution that's different from the one in the reveal trailer. That might indicate there are unlockable executions in the battle pass, or at least different ones per specialist. Man, look at how high we are. There's so much vertical space in this game. It's really awesome. So now the sandstorm is coming in, part of this map's levolution that functionally takes things from day to night conditions. And we're seeing the Condor with its engines tilted forward going full speed past the sandstorm. Previously, we only saw them hovering. We're in the third person, which is normal for the series, and these small rudder adjustments as it flies are actually a really great detail. Webster again running past a M1A5 tank. By the way, all of you were amazing in identifying this tank from the reveal trailer as a future variant of an Abrams. Here's an airdrop, something players can do anywhere on the map with a data pad that we don't actually see in this trailer. We also don't see a points meter of any kind that might let you build up to calling in these airdrops. Not exactly sure how it's going to work, but there's got to be some limiting factor or you'd just be able to spam vehicles all the time. In the last few Battlefield games, the points only came up on a radial menu, for example when you'd call in things like V1 rockets. Interesting to note here is the tank seems to have unlimited ammo. It fires 6 rounds, but there's the infinite symbol right here. So it doesn't seem like you're going to have to go back to places to reload. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I kind of like it when tanks have to go off and rearm and then come back to an objective. This explosion here is too big to be a vehicle and is probably some kind of objective like an ammo depot. Seems like there's going to be great moments around objectives. Here we see a destroyed tank with its turret blown off. Between this and the reveal trailer, it does look like there's going to be way better animations for tank destruction, like turrets getting blown away and ammo cook-offs. Jump to the very fast LATV-4 vehicle. You can clearly see there's a driver and a gunner and 2 passengers. Here we're in the gunner seat. In the developer presentation, they said they're trying to give abilities to many of the seats in vehicles, so everyone has something fun to do rather than just being along for the ride. As the chase ends, note This is the new unannounced specialist Delta that we talked about earlier. I think this icon is his handheld shield. Again, you'll see at the end of the trailer. A tank destroys someone's abandoned car, which is really rude. Definitely not winning any hearts and minds here. But the detail here on the tank track's kind of cool. And here are the jet wingtip vortices that we saw in the reveal trailer actually in the game. Should make it easier for you to visually track where jets are going. Okay, this is a bit of a surprise. It turns out that there's both a sandstorm and a tornado on the same map. So I guess there can be levolution and extreme weather events. Look at that lightning detail. We're also learning here how players get warned about the extreme weather events. If you notice here, the heads-up display starts flickering as it gets closer and closer. Later, you'll see players raise a hand when they're close enough to get sucked in. Delta opts to avoid the tornado altogether by ducking into a building. In this elevator, we see the new Plus system, where players can swap weapon attachments on the fly. This vector is being configured for close quarters with a red dot, a suppressor, and a drum magazine. Note there aren't any animations, the gun just transforms as you go. And it looks like Delta's name is Dozer based on this armband, and we're looking through the eyes of another operator, Sundance, who seems to be associated with the wingsuit, and these grenades I think are EMP grenades. In a big brain move, Dozer fires a rocket off at a scout chopper, forcing it down for a totally not planned Jeep stuff moment, and this is what the real in-game version of the moment from the cinematic reveal trailer looks like. You can definitely see it doesn't look as good as the pre-rendered sequence, and you don't have the benefit of slick camera angles. To note again, we are definitely high up in this building, which means more than one map has huge vertical spaces, and that is so cool. Here's an interesting detail. The C4 seems to have a max range now, so you can't just set it on a capture point and then clack it off halfway across the map when another squad shows up and starts capturing an objective. Hopefully, that's 9 kilometers, which I think is bigger than the largest map in this game. Also here, we seem to have some kind of long-range sniper optic mount on a revolver. Okay, zip lines here straight out of Battlefield Hardline, going from rooftop to rooftop. We're not sure yet if these are in fixed locations or from a specialist deploying them, but the way they're set on the ground here, it does look like a specialist if I had to guess. A Hind helicopter gunship shows up, and it is time to run as Delta gets taken out. We have a first look here at the downed icon. The Sundance specialist jumps off a roof and pops their wingsuit. We don't see the gadget slot being used here, so unless it's some kind of passive ability, I would guess the wingsuits are more common, maybe a piece of gear you have to take with you, because a lot of the other players just pop parachutes. But full disclosure, we've only seen this wingsuit associated with this specialist. I can't really make a call on this one yet. Okay, back to how players know they're too close to a tornado. There's a hand-raising animation here by Maria the medic, in addition to the HUD flicker from earlier. That seems like your last warning before you go airborne. You can tell by the menu here that we're looking through the eyes of McKay now, being sucked in, but he hasn't popped his parachute yet. So this is what it's like being taken up into the tornado. Here we now see that the parachute has steering handles. But something this doesn't show is if you'll finally be able to cut your parachute in Battlefield. When I went back to play earlier games, I totally forgot that you can't do this like you can do in modern Battle Royale games. I'm nitpicking a bit here, but the helicopter flares and other projectiles don't get sucked into the tornado, which would have been a cool detail. And a funny side note here, if you look really close, you can see a soldier doing barrel rolls with their parachute. Now inside an MV-38 Condor that we just barely got into, we can see its weapon slots, and it has a top gunner position, which is interesting because you couldn't get that on a helicopter. The Condors seem like they're going to be very heavily armed troop transports. Something we don't see anywhere around here is any kind of large-scale building destruction. Buildings do not seem to come down in this game. Okay, change of map. This is the largest one in the game, called Breakaway, taking place in Antarctica. We're back at the Outlook objective inspired by Dam of Van Peak that we saw in the reveal trailer. This now gives you an idea of how things look versus when they're pre-rendered. This is back at the Resource Depot, which is a vehicle-focused area. And I know there are hovercraft here, but I was really hoping to see the penguins from the reveal trailer. Don't see any yet. Jump to Discarded, taking place in India. We're probably fighting at the ship called the Colossus that contains a rogue nuclear sub. This tank is another Abrams M5A3. More zip lines up here. They seem to be all over the place, or they're being deployed by a specialist. Now we're inside the stadium, most likely back on Hourglass in Qatar. You can see here the A2 objective from the start of the trailer. This seems like Delta from earlier in the trailer, same armband and armor, has now opened a portable shield. That seems like that's his specialist ability, and he probably falls under the support class umbrella. Off to the left here, there's also another operator that seems to be deploying portable cover. Oh boy, one thing to say here is the brightness of friendly icons could be a problem. This is classic Battlefield where a friendly gets behind an enemy soldier and you think the enemy is friendly because you see their icon. This is something that usually you can turn down in the menu. This gun also has a dual sight, so there seems to be a lot of these in the game. To note here, we're seeing white hit markers. I think there was a red one earlier for vehicles, and I'm wondering if there's another one for headshots. That credit goes to Battlefield Hardline if I remember right, for diversifying unifying hit markers. And finally, we get a look at Maria's Surette pistol in action. She's the only class that can revive from a distance and brings players back to full health. Jump back to Orbital. We see another instance of a player calling in an airdrop. Here we see a column of vehicles with an armored car and pickup trucks, so not everything will be futuristic military. And finally, we end on Delta, getting a close look at a rocket launch. Something else funny, I first thought this guy was a giant mech soldier, but if you look closer, he's just a player riding up the side of the launch pad on an ATV. Wow, that was a lot. I'm sure there's stuff we didn't cover, missed, or just ran out of time on. You're also amazing on our first video, so please hop in the comments. I know I skipped over guns altogether. E3's in full swing. Make sure to head on over to GameSpot's YouTube page, where we'll be covering your favorite games through our Play for All live streams. Battlefield 2042 has several upcoming alphas and betas, with a final launch on October 22nd, and I am excited. Thanks for watching.